Welcome to this evening's Materials and Design annual lecture for 2014. It's about 8 years to the month, back to dim distant days of 2006, that there was a launch of a report that was sucking in all sorts of contributions from the materials community. It's one of these things that BIS, then DTI, had arranged, and it was all about innovation and growth, specifically about the materials community. There were two, in my view, incredibly important commentaries and recommendations within that report. One of them was the belief, the very strong belief, that interdisciplinary teams, and a very wide interdisciplinary team, was essential, associated with getting innovation and growth going within the UK. But an even more fundamental point was being made in that report, which suggested that within those interdisciplinary teams, the first prerequisite was to fully engage with product design. And it was from actually that report and those early beginnings in 2006 that saw the initiation of what we now come to expect of products of the materials and design exchange. It has actually become a vital part of what we know as the Materials Knowledge Transfer Network, the Materials KTN. And the journey to date has, from a technologist's point of view, been quite extraordinary. Understanding needs, communication styles, understanding sensitivities, and really what was required from the product design community has led to a fuller and more complete understanding of both sides of this relationship. And a special thanks this evening to our partners in the Materials and Design Exchange, the Royal College of Art, Design Business Association, Institution of Engineers, Engineering Designers, CSD, Engineering Employers, so on and so forth, a whole raft of different partners who have really made this voyage quite special. This evening's lecture, I think, provides real testament to the importance of the relationship between materials and design, and it's a real privilege to welcome Sebastian back to the live lecture this evening. Sebastian is the creative principal of Sebastian Conran Associates, has, in my mind, created a real seamless link between materials, design and manufacturing, and I hope that tonight's lecture explains some of this background, but more importantly sets those new challenges for designers when form meets fabrication. Sebastian.
Well, thank you very much indeed. When I was a child, I thought I wanted to be an inventor when I grew up. And I was fascinated in how things were made, and I took apart anything I could, and sometimes I even put them back together again and they worked. And I was really loved making models of aeroplanes, and I was fascinated by aeroplanes. And I can remember this word metal fatigue come up in the newspaper and hearing it on the news, and it was referring to the Havilland Comet, and it's the world's first jet airliner, and it was British, and we led the world. And a simple misunderstanding of the stress fatigue of aluminium meant that we lost the lead we had, and it had created an enormous amount of damage to the reputation of UK aircraft industry. But it could so easily have been Boeing or Lockheed or so many other people. It's just that this is the price you pay for going first. I later went on to art school to study industrial design engineering, and here I am, thin, in 1975, and I can remember going to my first art history lecture, and I didn't know anything about art history or anything, and just being totally blown away by lots of things. But most importantly, it was this image, which has been quite tectonic for me, of this Richard Hamilton, which is called "What Is It That Makes This Home So Different, So Appealing?" And I was so excited when the Tate Modern were going to show Richard Hamilton's work, and I rushed along there. And did they have the original? No, they just had a little print. And I'm just desperate to see the original sometime. But anyway, sorry, I've gone off the point. For some reason, I found myself, this is my first real commercial piece of design, which is a record sleeve for The Clash. And for some reason, I became their roadie, and I could change a plug and do things like that. And I was quite technically minded, and I did all sorts of other stuff for them, and it was great fun. But I did find myself sort of, studying industrial design, but graduating in rock and roll, but there we Then a few years passed, and I found myself at Mothercare. And I was head of design at Mothercare, and walking to Mothercare in those days was a bit, right at the very beginning, was like walking into a camping shop. There was no visual consistency at all. And so what we needed is a clear personality to all the products and a visual consistency. So we created a visual language that needed to be feminine, trusted, and gently clinical, and we called it soft tech. And right at the beginning of the 80s, the impact of the innovation of the shipping container hadn't quite hit Britain. We knew it was there, stuff was coming in from China, but China was still reeling after the Cultural Revolution, and we were making stuff in the UK. And in fact, at the beginning of the 80s, Mothercare used to say that over 90% of all its products were made in the UK. And M&S had that sort of slogan written on its bags. If only the same were true today. I mean, if 10% were made in the UK, I'd be amazed. Anyway, at Mothercare, the pushchairs were a really important business. And they looked pretty medieval by today's standards. I can remember going to see the manufacturer. He had just invested £1 million in a shiny new chroming plant. And then when I started sort of talking about what my vision for the future of pushchairs were, using structural polymers and anodized aluminium, he could see that his huge investment was not going to be utilised. And he said, but you can't use plastic, it's for toys and it breaks. And I said, well, look, at the next meeting I took along a ski boot and I said, look, this is what I mean by polymers. And actually, to give him his credit, he did come round and we studied ski equipment and the way it was made and the sort of materials it was, and we created what became known as the Via pushchair. And sure enough, we used all sorts of different polymers. We moulded onto the tube, and it was actually quite advanced. And it was the first pushchair of its time to use structural polymer components. And I mean, my view about pushchairs is that they should be really light, fold really small, and have huge amounts of space for putting your shopping. But we did go out and we asked people, and we fed it all in, and what we try and do is we try and think of the features we want, but also think of the benefits we want and get a clear shopping list before we start designing, and so we really understand what the customer might want, what opportunities there are. You know, we weren't using polymers just for the sake of all their modern materials. It was that it would cut down the assembly costs, it would make the product more reliable, and actually it turned out to be a very, very good thing. The problem with the using polymers was that there was a huge tooling cost. And so to reassure the directors of Mother Care, we carried out some focus groups, and there was a room full of ladies, and in the new pushchair was Wolf, and the first person who said anything said, "Oh, makes you want to have another baby, doesn't it?" And so they okayed the tooling after that. So then sometime later, I came across this baby cup, and I'd got children by then, and it had problems, and it leaked. I mean, it had this great idea of having this silicone seal at the top, but it leaked all around the edges, and it wasn't really fit for purpose. And it also looked a bit generic. So I wrote to the manufacturers, and I said, I could do a far better job than this. And actually, it's one of the very few times I've approached someone myself and said, I think I can do this better. And then they said, fine, we'll do it. And we did, and it was a huge success. But what we did is actually, I remembered somewhere that Earl Tupper's patent was based on using a polyethylene lid with a polypropylene body, or maybe it was the other way around. But on this, we used a polypropylene lid because the silicone would bond to the polypropylene when we co-molded it, and we used a polyethylene body, so we would get a good seal where the dissimilar sized molecules would seal, whereas if we used a polypropylene on polypropylene, it sticks and it doesn't work. And it's using a dissimilar material was what made the product. And also, what was wonderful is that the materials are much less expensive than the original materials, and 25 million of them made in Wales, what's more, so it can be done. And the visual appearance of it and the personality of it, I have to say, was based on the sort of translucent look that Apple was doing with its iMacs of the day. And the same sort of thing that I've been doing, but not translucent for a camera, obviously, with these cameras, and we made 2.7 million of these. And they were designed to use up the world's remaining stocks of 126 film. I mean, it's a promotional object, but I wish I still had one actually. But and so I was pretty much obsessed with plastics, and I looked on these sorts of things. This is Joseph and Joseph range, and they have done very innovative things. And I look at them and I think, God, that's pretty amazing. And it's also what I think is, if I think about it a bit more, is, well, is this what I want? And it's interesting when Apple came out with the iPod for the first time. What was it that made the iPod so different, so appealing? And what made me really want one? I bought one for my son, who was probably about 15 at the time, and he said, "Oh, Dad, this is amazing, it's so cool. What does it do?" And the point is that there were lots of other MP3 players out there, and the straight lines and between radii was so familiar. It was, when I was at Central St Martin, someone had put a little sign over the product design department's door saying Department of Rounding Corners. It was almost like a cliche piece of design. But what was so special compared to other MP3 players was the fact that it had a metal back, and it had this thin wall, stent steel back to it, which all of a sudden said this is quality. This isn't just a lump of plasticky stuff. It's quality. And Apple have gone further and further to get across the fact that their products are made of metal, not like their competitors, which are made of plastic. They seem to go to any length. And this computer that I'm using here is made out of anodized aluminium. And aluminium can only be anodized if it is cut from the billet, or it can be extruded, or it can be, well, basically extruded aluminium, but cast aluminium cannot be anodized because it has a porosity in it, and this will not allow it to happen. And anodizing is a electrochemical process. So to make these products, first Apple has to buy extruded aluminium rod, and then it has to roll it flat into and then cut it into a billet, and then CNC route out, mill out all the details, and then you end up with a structure which is very rigid, but the most important thing, it can be anodized. And why does Johnny Ives and Steve Jobs have this obsession with, oh, it needs to be anodized? Why? Because the form has to follow the finish, as it were. And that's because anodizing is a very tough surface that doesn't mark like stainless steel, that feels wonderful to touch, and your fingers glide over it. And it's kind of like nothing else. And they tried making it out of sheet and applying it to the early titanium mats, and it just fell off. And so this was their solution, is to get their suppliers in the Far East to fill their factories with armies of CNC machines. I mean, it does seem quite obsessive. And talking of obsessive, this guy is Dieter Rams, and he was my hero, and lots of other people's hero, when we were at college. And he started at Brown Electrical about the same time as I was born, and that Richard Hamilton collage was done. Anyway, he was to apply a sort of Teutonic rationalism, almost in a sort of typographical grid fashion, to a lot of his product design. The fact that he'd been trained as an architect actually drove a lot of the design and this sort of grid approach and this alignment and this template approach. Here you can see a Brown product, and here you can see an Apple product. And you know, Apple are completely unapologetic, and I mean, they admire Dieter Rams, and they say he is, you know, it's inspired by him, and this is a terrific thing. What goes around comes around. And actually, if you see what inspired Dieter Rams before, you will find all the DNA that is in Rams's work and in Johnny Ives' work, can sort of stem from this miniature, sub-miniature Minox camera that was made in Latvia in the mid-30s. And it was designed by a guy called Walter Zack, who wasn't even an engineer, he was a photographer. And if you ever take one of these apart, or just use one, is that the quality of the detailing in it, and the finishing, and the you know, the fact that as you focus, the little parallax moving, I mean, it's so sophisticated. And you know, my little cameras cost, you know, 38 each. This, you could buy a house in Chelsea at the time when it was made for the same price, but not now, I should imagine. Anyway, going from this very sort of Teutonic rations, very sort of Euclidean forms, and not obvious, but driven by formulaic design. And I'm going into looking at organic design. And I've been asked to design a traditional pair of kitchen scales. I've been told that traditional kitchen scales, there weren't any modern ones out on the market. Could I design one? And I was not sure what to do. We had lots of ideas. And I was walking along Chesil Beach with my children, and I picked up a pedal, and I thought, oh, these could be the weights. And I had this mad idea of getting people collecting weights and weighing them, and it's impossible. But what we did is we just got CAD software, which allowed us to know the exact volume and therefore the weight, because we knew the specific gravity of zinc, and so we could design sort of organic forms in CAD and accurately be able to predict how much they're going to weigh. And you know, these were made in zinc. The whole thing was made in, and we used a polymer polycarbonate for the one of the dishes, and then stainless steel for the other. And it sold incredibly well. And John Lewis used it in a lot of their advertising. And I was sort of chatting to one of the buyers at John Lewis, and she said, "Why does it sell so well?" I said, "Well, fantastic design." But actually, I thought, well, maybe I should just stand in the shop and watch how people react to it. And it was quite interesting because people came along and they looked at the scales and they looked at the weights, and you know, you saw them pick up the weights and they would roll them around in their hand, and you saw a little binary switch go off. You saw absolute body language happening, and oh, you know, this looks nice. And I've seen similar sorts of things when things haven't been selling, and you just stand in the store and you see people, oh, that looks nice, and they pick it up and they put it down. And very quickly, and this was, we made some sort of biscuit tin things, storage tins, and the manufacturer had de-specced the wall thickness. So all of a sudden these things just felt like they felt like bits of packaging. They didn't feel like solid, permanent goods. When you're designing things, I mean, they say form follows function, but it's a bit more than that. And it's when you're looking for inspiration, I find a lot of inspiration I get from looking at sculptors, like especially Constantine Brancusi, but Boccioni, and also Anish Kapoor. And the way they treated forms and the way they treated surfaces, I also found that was quite fascinating and inspiring. And this sort of led a bit and moved into other products. These two products, one is a corkscrew and the other is a salt and pepper mill. Here we had used polyoxyl methacrylate because it will sand very well. When I say sand, I mean linish is the correct word, so you can rub it afterwards. So what we did is we mould them and then we deplastified them by sanding them down, basically. And it's quite interesting. I bumped into someone who said, a fellow designer, quite a few years afterwards, he said, "Yes, I bought some of your salt and pepper mills. I must say, I bought them because I was really intrigued what the material was. I mean, how did you get that finish?" And I said, "Oh, I've just got a lot of people sort of sanding them down after they've been made." And this is a barbecue, and a sort of a kettle barbecue. And the brief here was, it had to be an iconic product, please. And the number of briefs you get that says, "We want an iconic product." I mean, it's slightly drives out the wall. And, but the important thing, it was for Sainsbury's, and they wanted to get 8 in a 1 metre drop in a supermarket. So that means there had to be enough room for you to get your fingers in and out, and a bit of space wobble so it went in. So you're designing this, you know, it's form follows freight really, because you're designing it to how many can you get in a shipping container. And here's another example, and you know, you're thinking as you're designing it, well, how is it going to be taken home? You know, you want something that, and we've got a whole series of products that we're designing them around, you know, being able to take them on the underground. Do you want to be able to put it on your back of your bicycle? Of course, now there's so much home delivery going on. It's, you know, is it DHLable and things like that. This is a range of a bathroom range we designed for Boulogne. And when we designed it, the fashion was for very rectilinear bathrooms at the time, and we came along and said, oh, we want to make it like an egg. My thinking for making it like an egg was that it was going to, eggs have got hard shells, and you know, you're in the bathroom and it's the only place where you're allowed to be naked. So I wanted to have nice organic forms. And you can see the Anish Kapoor influence on the edge of the MaDE here, talking of organic forms. It was, Nigella was great fun to work with, and the first thing she said to me is, you know, Sebastian, this is all about maximising my brand assets. We decided that a lot of it was about appealing to the inner child, and we produced these Goldilocks type cups, measuring cups, and it was quite interesting. I learnt an awful lot from working very closely with someone like that, and the blue happened to be the colour of the foam that we used to model things with, and it's we modified that, but also the importance of designing things which have a playfulness and do appeal to the inner child is something we take forward. But also there's functional innovation and building in a measuring jug. It measures as before, so that you don't have to keep on straightening it out to see how much is there. And thinking about how it was sold in stores, which was a very important aspect of it, because we'd go to John Lewis and they'd say great, and they'd put it in all their different departments, and you couldn't see it all at once, and it just got dispersed. So we designed the shop fitting and said, look, you really need to put it all together to tell the story. They did it, and there was a significant increase in sales. Anyway, so having been designing for other people all my life, I thought it was time for me to put my money where my mouth was and design my own range. And this is called Universal Expert. And what the story behind it is, it's not plasticky, because there's a huge amount of coloured plastic cutwares out there already. And it's, you know, what we say is universal function. Everything has a universality of function, and it's multifunctional, or does things in a different way, and it's expert quality and expert design, of course. But it's designing simple products and elegant products that are made out of porcelain and beechwood, and sometimes you have to use polymers, but you only use polymers where the polymer is the best material to use. We never use a polymer because it'll make the product cheaper to make, and I think that's where you get the sort of differentiation. I mean, we're marketing this as a premium range, and so we've got anodized aluminium cookware, we've got stainless steel electricals, and so on. And you know, around the sink there's so much plastic, and we wanted to sort of banish plastic as much as we could and look at different ways of making things. What is quite interesting is that when you have factories, very rarely will you have a factory that has glass making, silicon rubber, and beechwood machining processes in the same place. So there's going to be one person that is going to be buying these separate bits from different factories and putting them together. And it's, do you order it from the glass maker, do you order it from the silicon bung maker, or do you order it from the wood maker? And you have to work out which one, because they've all got to buy off each other, and then you'll pay a margin off each one. So you tend to purchase things from the person who makes the most expensive component. And the silicon bungs, by the way, they've got a helical vent built into the stopper, so that when you pour the oil out, there's no glugging at all. And I'm very proud of that. And, oh right, I don't know how that's going. No, that's a 3D printer we just designed. Here's the, so we have to go out and sell the product. And the first thing you sell the product, you have to create a stand to put on a trade show. And we had a bit of help with this one, but we got the best stand in Chicago in 2013, which was great fun. And then we thought when we come to, we wanted to put a stand in Earl's Court this year, 2014. And we were told by the licensee who funds a lot of this activity that there wasn't any money to do it. And anyway, eventually I persuaded him that we could build it ourselves if he just gives us a budget of £5,000 for materials. And so this was the design. We decided to use scaffolding boards and key clamp and pegboard, but our big extravagance was going to be a neon sign. In fact, the neon sign cost almost as much as the whole stand put together. Here we are, and I'm going to just play it. You can see the design team here. And so we had to ferry everything from our studio in Olympia to the stand in Earl's Court. The van didn't arrive, and so we had to get... Anyway, it was a fantastic test of ingenuity, and it turned out to be much more of a team-building exercise than a stand-building exercise. And we all felt so energised by this whole thing. And then, of course, the designers were manning the stand for the next 4 days, and we had to take it down. Took it down in an hour and a half, actually, but it was really interesting to get everyone involved in all stages of the design and see how the customers would actually react to the product on show. Anyway, what was interesting was actually that scaffolding boards are about a fifth of the price at the end of the summer as what they are at the beginning. It's not really surprising, is it? But, and there's the finished stand. We had this sort of sloping top, which worked brilliantly when we tested it. But of course, the planks when they arrived were quite damp. And once they dried out, we realised that a degree less might have been a bit better. And we made this whole back thing in our workshop. And we left it, we built it, I guess, in October and November. And the stand had to go up in January. So we left it up, and gradually the little shelves sort of drooped. And then, actually, what it did is it even snapped the bolts that went through. And these planks are made out of a material called deal. So we realised that the finish was raw deal. But anyway, so this is the neon sign, which was really made a difference, because without the neon sign, it would have just looked like a cheap old stand. But with the neon sign, it's almost like wearing your Uniqlo clothes with a Rolex watch, I think is how Mr. Uniqlo does it. These are some cookers we've designed for belling, and rather wonderfully we got a German Design Council award for it. And they're made out of vitreous enamel finish, and they've got solid metal knobs, and to give an authenticity. And you know, the effort in getting the clients to make solid metal knobs as opposed to horrible plated plastic ones. He claimed that nobody would notice. And then, I see the literature, and it said, yes, these solid metal knobs, inspired by the controls on the Spitfire. And I don't know where that came from at all. But post-rationalisation is a wonderful thing. This is a rather lovely bag we designed for Colony Leather. It retails for £1,600, and it was one of their best-selling products. And you take that down at B&Q, and £1,600 is a ridiculous obscene. I mean, it's beyond obscene amount of money. But the point is, if you sell it in Hermes, where they sell handbags for £5,000, £1,600 for a toolkit full of tools seems rather a snip. It's important to realise that where things are going to be sold and what they're going to be sold alongside and who they're going to be sold to. These are little compact, trendy Japanese car that we designed for the Tokyo Motor Show in 2003. We got the brief in February 2003, and then the motor show was in October. So it was a very exciting project, lots to do, massive budget, just what you want. And the original car interior was, you guessed it, very plasticky. And our show car couldn't just be a fantasy, it had to be something that they could build, and it could be a realistic showing of what they were going to build. And also it had to therefore pass in-cab testing and all these sorts of things. So we had to more or less use the existing body shell. And this is a sort of declassified version, and we've simplified things. We've got a LCD screen in there, and we've put in leather seats, but we've sort of the signal towards tradition with the ribbing, and lots of anodized aluminium, obviously, but principally the finish you see is mainly polymer. But the point is, it doesn't look plasticky. I mean, there's no problems that using polymers. It's avoiding the sort of plasticky quality about them. And this is a yacht interior for, you would think I do all these luxury products, but it's very rare. It's called a T60, it's made in Kidderminster. You can't get further from the coast, anywhere in the UK than Kidderminster, but that's where they make them. And we went for sort of pale oak colours and tried to make the space look bigger and try and use different forms that you traditionally find inside a yacht. But this informed a lot of our thinking when we took over this project, which was originally designed by Paul Priestman, and took his concept and had to implement it. But the idea of actually taking a very small hotel room and designing it like it's a cabin in an aircraft or the cabin inside a boat. So you're taking a very small space and giving it a sort of premium quality by doing this. One of the most exciting projects I did was working on Concorde and on their customer experience, designing a customer experience. And this starts off as, what's the lounge like, what's the interior of the cabin like, what everything you touch, all the materials that are used. They've got to be very light, and they've also got to be quite small, so everything had to be sort of designed down because they had to slide the shelves in, and there was just so much space you could do. One of the interesting things, we prototyped some cutlery up in titanium because it was actually cost effective to make titanium cutlery because of the weight saving, but nobody liked it because it was too light and it felt plasticky. They assumed it was plastic, whereas in fact it was incredibly expensive titanium. And later on, someone came to me and with a Concord nose and asked me what they'd want to do with it. I mean, what could I do with it? So we created a piece of sculpture from it called Icon, their name, not mine. And but the point is that it's a concord between art and science. And I think, you know, for such a totemic aeroplane, it's rather, I think it sort of lives up to it. This is a interesting product. This is a product sells incredibly well, and we're just retooling it. And it's a cafetiere, and it's just like a cafetiere mug. So you spoon a piece of coffee, some coffee in, and you pour boiling water in, and then you wait a bit and you push the plunger down, and it makes a really, really good cup of coffee. And it has a huge number of followers. It's very difficult to make it out of any other material apart from polymers. Believe me, we've tried. And I didn't understand why I spoke to my father, why can't we have it in the donut shop? It's made of plastic, and I don't like drinking coffee out of plastic. And, you know, and actually I couldn't quite understand what he means, but there's something about plastics which are, they're temporary. And actually, if you think about plastics, they don't last. And yet, people complain about plastics because they're not biodegradable, and they use up the world's resources and all these sorts of things. And I look at plastics and I think, well, you get a lot more bang for a kilogram of ABS than you do out of a couple of litres of petrol. And why does that make plastics worse off? I mean, is burning petrol better than making something out of plastic and it lasting a few years? And the other thing is that this notion that plastics are going to, you know, they don't disintegrate, they don't compost. Well, you know, as we know from Greek and Roman pottery, ceramics and glass don't compost. So it's. I think there's something slightly. My big problem with polymers is that they're plasticky, but I think there's a slight overreaction to their sustainability credentials. But you know, I'm not trying to say that there's no hole in the ozone layer or anything like that. I just think that maybe we could really think this through a bit better. Anyway, more to the point. I mean, you're looking at someone whose job is to create a currency for consumerism. So, you know, it's maybe not surprising I have a bit of that attitude. And so, my amazement, I was watching Avatar, and there was a baddie drinking out of my coffee cup. So, talk about design to last. Anyway, very, you know, the sort of thing we want is to get 5 stars in Amazon and things like that. You know, customer satisfaction is very, very important. So when you're looking at the tool bag and you're looking at the other end of the spectrum, the coffee cup, you know, what is it that creates itchy wallet? Why do people want things? Why do people have to have things? Well, it's value, of course. And value is a lot more than just a perception of fair exchange. And if you deconstruct it, very crudely, it's desire divided by sacrifice. Or, you know, what makes up desire and what you're prepared to swap for it. And as I said, you know, when we're talking about value, we're talking about a perception of fair exchange. And value resides only in the mind. You can't write it, it's not describable, but it is a perception. And also, brand is a perception. I don't believe that you can see a brand, you can't smell a brand, you can't lick a brand. It's just an idea that you have in your mind. And it is the job of marketeers to make sure that as many people have the same idea of what this means and to influence you in this way. And when we're talking about brand, it's what the marketers have said, the reputation of the brand, the fame of the brand, as it were, form follows fame, what your own experience of the brand has been, and what you bought, what people you know have said, peer pressure and things like that. And when you're looking at design, I believe that there's an animal part of your brain that controls your emotions and your fight or fright. And then there's a rational side of your brain, which is a thinking part that deals with reason. And the emotional side of the brain deals with these sort of brand issues and personality and aesthetics of products. And it's quite driven by fashion and the zeitgeist. And of course, fashion is merely herd instinct if you look at it on a animal brain level. And there's issues like, scarcity and coolness. And the story behind the thing, it's the story that makes it cool. And I always think back to that wonderful Josiah Wedgwood quote where he says that, fashion is far more significant than merit sometimes. And in other words, however good your product is, if it's not what people want, then it's stuff. It really, you've got to be in tune with demand. And then there's the rational side. So emotional design and brand are sort of tied together in some way. And then there's the rational side, and here I'm talking about the usefulness and how things are used and how well they perform and how well they do the job. And I'm always trying to, when I say functional innovation, it's not innovation for innovation's sake, it's innovation to do a better job. And here we're looking at, if someone is buying a car, well, clearly they're influenced by what it looks like, their sort of animal brain, the emotional design, and they're also influenced by how much it does to the cabin and what other aspects of its performance. So there's this conversation going on with the two parts of your brain. And then there is fabrication and fabric in this case. If I really understand the materials I'm using and how they're going to be finished and how they can be manipulated, I can design something so it will be straightforward to make. Well, I wouldn't say this iPad was straightforward to make, but it is, if you really understand it, you can design integrity in, you can design failure out, and you can make dependable products. And also, it's this same approach that you need to take to manufacturing that you need to put into the design of services, because service design is about perceived quality. And then finally, of course, there's cost. And the obvious thing when people talk about cost is the monetary value, the price, the form follows finance, as it were. But there's also issues of convenience. And this is more and more. Why do people shop online? Is it it's cheaper or is more convenient? Clearly, when you're buying your groceries, there's a risk element. You don't know what exactly is going to come, but it's much more convenient. It's the same price. So a lot of people shop online, which is a nightmare for the grocers because they lose a lot of money on online shopping, but they can't afford not to do it. So this is a big issue. And then there are other moral issues like ethics and sustainability. I mean, sustainability shouldn't be a moral issue, it should be a rational issue, but I think it probably comes down there. But if you look at how these different judgments you make and the conversation that is going on in people's mind when they're judging value of products, because without value there is no trade, you get a conversation between what you need your consciousness and your intuition, what you want, your subconsciousness. And it's fairly clear that there are different parts of the brain that are sort of thinking about it. I mean, I don't mean literally different parts of the brain, but it's different parts thinking about it. Anyway, I mean, talking about, design really is the legacy of thought, and what we're looking at here is how, when I'm 80, which is frighteningly close now, how am I going to deal with my life? And so I'm going to talk a bit about how we're approaching this. And one of these things is electrical device that you wear around your neck that you press if you need an emergency. The trouble is that it only works indoors, and so a client of mine built one that would work, that had a built-in GPS into it. Anyway, this was huge and needed charging every day. And so they came to us and we thought, well, what we do is we split them up into a wristband that actually you could wear in the shower and you could wear in your sleep without strangling yourself. And then a clip. So when you left the house, you would take the clip, which is actually like a mobile phone without buttons. And it's all about the ecosphere of the system. And what it meant is that the wristband only needed to be charged every 24 days, and the clip only needed to be charged every 24 hours. So it's sort of thinking away that, and to do this we produce quite a lot of sort of user studies, and we storyboard how things are going to be approached. And then we're looking at smart homes and independent living, and this leads us on to thinking about designing robots. And I firmly believe that robots should be as non-humanoid as possible, because the more humanoid they are, the more you expect from them. And I tell you, you're going to be disappointed for quite a long time, because if I'm using today's technology to produce the number of instructions our brain produces, which is about 20 billion gigaflops a day, you need a computer the size of Battersea Bridge, and you need a Thames to cool it, which isn't feasible with the thing. So we're looking at these and we're just saying, well, what if it could work like that? How would it work? And what would it do in the home? Okay, so what I'm not going to do now is to design a robot. What I'm going to do is design a robotic table. Because you don't expect a table to come when you call, and you don't expect a table to be able to go up and down. And so it's much better to have a magic table than a distinctly dumb humanoid robot. So this is looking at how it might be an over-bed table, and you think, well, it could be used in hospitals, and the number of times that the nurse doesn't have to come in to move the table forwards and back. And even me, I read in bed, I like to work on my computer in bed, and I want to go to sleep, and the table just moves away. And then you can use it in the kitchen, and then say, none of us really eat our meals in front of the TV, but if we wanted to, and how it works in the workplace. And it doesn't take a lot of thought to think, well, we're in the supermarket, and picking in the dark supermarkets and things like that. There's quite a lot of opportunity in that. So I see that the role of design is actually making science successful, or transforming science into experience, or transforming knowledge into culture. And to do that, we have a fairly linear cycle, and I can show it to you like this, and it's really quite dry, And but this is how we do it, and this is the sort of simple guide to how design works. Oh, yeah, sorry. And people, I show this and they go, ha ha ha, but design is circular, ha ha ha, it's iterative, ha ha ha. But we have deadlines and time is linear. So however iterative or circular the design is, you've got to do it in your own time, and or else you do what Land Rover say is you run out of process. But we think about the materials we're going to be using. We're thinking about the fashions that are going to be prevalent when we are going to launch a thing. We think about the personalities of things right at the beginning, right early on. And our aim is always to produce aspirational products that people feel good about, and they'll be reassuringly expensive and things like that. But what is really important is to remember that design is a collaborative activity, and there are three key stakeholders. There's the marketing people, the people who have to make it, who have to sell it, and then there's the design stakeholders, the people who have to create it, and then there's the manufacturing technical people, the people who have to make it. Now, so often you'll find that, marketing will get it all here and they'll write a brief and then they'll look for a designer and say, hey, here's a brief, go and design it. And then the designers will go and, have their creative bit and they will come up with a great idea. The marketing people love it. And then they will go to the technical people and say, yeah, that's great. And then this is where the looping happens, because the technical people haven't seen this product and they realise that these great ideas that they've had up here can't be done. So that's why it's so important to have the technical people involved in every stage, and also the marketing people involved in every stage, and the designers involved in every stage. Because you have the designers involved at the end, because A, I do an awful lot to help sell the product, but B, observing how can this product be made better. Because no product designed by man can't be designed better. That's why we need female designers, and there's hardly any of them. And but the different stages are led by different stakeholders, and this is an important thing to observe. So collaboration is very important. And then finally, I just got a little story to wind it all up with. Just one slide now. And Alf and I were down the pub. Alf's an architect, and I had been cycling on the road, and I passed a church, and outside the church it said, let's talk about the F word. And I said to Alfred, what do you think they meant? Forgiveness? Faith? F word, what do you think they're getting at? Clearly we're trying to be provocative. And he said, well, you know what the three F's of architecture are. And I said, oh, form follows function. Is it fit for purpose? That is, and he said, no. Form follows future. Is it environmentally sustainable? Design is a legacy of thought. And you don't get much bigger legacy than a building. Form follows fabrication. How easy is it to make? And what materials is it made from? The fabric. Form follows finish. What use environment is it going to be in? How do I need to finish this thing? Form follows failure. Is it evolutionary better? It's not like survival of the fittest. It's the dwindling. It's weakest link is what it really is. And then there's form follows feelings. Is it emotionally appropriate? Is it what people want? Form follows fantasy. Does it inspire people? Form follows fun. You know, is it playful? Does it put a smile in the mind, like the Nigella cup? Form follows fingers. Is it ergonomically sound? I mean, incredibly important, especially in this age of CAD design, that people don't, you know, get things right and make enough models. Form follows fame. Does it reinforce the brand? Form follows fashion. Is, you know, like Josiah Wedgwood, is it what people want? Form follows feedback. You know, the mother care pushchair, what did the customers want from that? Form follows freight. How many can I get in a shipping container? How are DHL going to deal with it? Form follows faith. You need amazing commitment to in yourself. You need commitment to succeed, but you need a lot of faith in yourself, because intangible decisions are very difficult to discuss in a meeting room, and it's so quick and they're so important, and as soon as you start talking about them, you find someone talking about metrics and evidence and things like that, and you've really got to have faith in yourself. Form follows finance. Is it affordable to make, to buy? And, you know, any idiot can design something that's complicated and expensive. It's getting it at the right price. Form follows fanaticism. You know, you've got to get the devil in the detail, and every detail has to be right. Fickle friend. This is a computer, because, you know, you can trust the pencil, but a computer can fool you a lot of the time. Form follows fandango, because simplicity is often very, very complicated. And finally, form follows frustration, because it is the mother F of invention. So anyway, Alfred, what are the 3 F's of architecture? Finish it, photograph it, and F off. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. I'm John Down from MaDE, and I heard Sebastian give a shortened version of this talk in the summer to some international students we had over as part of another project we've been working with, and I thought we've got to get him back. And that's not just because I've had 2 of those coffee mugs.
Oh, right.
They've gone all around the world. I completely go and buy them. 5-star, top mark. Quite a few of you have sent questions in. Is Colin Ledson in the room? Because I quite like this.
Elegance is a word that engineers often use for a design that works beautifully. And frequently it's a problem for product designers to appreciate the beauty of engineering, just as it's very difficult for engineers to appreciate the beauty of product design. Can we somehow bring the 2 back together?
I love elegance as a phrase, and simplicity lies in elegance. And there used to be the Duke of Edinburgh's award for elegant design, and elegant was thought of as a rather old-fashioned word, you know, and we need to move on. And then it's a good design, and you know, the trouble is with good design is what we really want is outstanding design, and good is not enough. But elegance, you know, simplicity is the ultimate elegance, and simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, according to apparently Leonardo da Vinci. And I think that Coco Chanel had quite a lot to say about simplicity as well. And what I hope you agreed with what I was saying was that, you know, try and make it as simple as possible, and, you know, look at something and see how can we make it simpler. But then design and engineering, there are compromises that you need to make. It's got to be done on time, it's got to be done to budget, and but, you know, I prefer to burn midnight oil and get it more elegant, and then had something that every time I look at it, I'm going to regret that I didn't spend the extra time on. And, you know, design is a legacy of thought. And I remember seeing an interview with the chief engineer of, not Handy Page, anyway, the people who built the Comet jet, and him saying he just remembers the moment. He said, yes, all right, just rivet the windscreen in because we need to get it done. And it was that decision that actually let down the whole of the British aircraft industry. And it's just that one slip where he's very tired, and I'm rambling on here, sorry. But anyway, I perfectly agree with you.
James Wood. Is James Wood here from Studio Wood?
It's about basically in the coming decades as we approach an era of possible nano manufacturing, where we can build from the atomic level up. Will that kind of render the period of form follows fabrication to an end, basically?
Well, there is that, you know, the dream of digital fabrication, and everything is going to be built by a 3D printer. And I don't see much evidence that we've moved that far away from an icing machine that's controlled by, or a glue gun that's controlled by a CNC machine. And I mean, we have, but I think you know, to completely build things on a nano level, to almost grow products, is what we're talking about. Clearly that will come, and you'll be able to grow something out of a piece of data and some atoms and things like that. But I think it's a lot more complicated. I think it's a similar issue that we've got with the robots, is that rather than trying to produce very sophisticated humanoid robots that can't even walk upstairs and aren't really robots because they're not autonomous, but actually designing something that's quite simple, that does something quite magic and unexpected, is going to make much more of a bang. It's sort of coming at the problem from the other end. Is that all right, James?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good question.
We've got quite a few students in the room, which is brilliant. Shristi Mocker, I think, from Central.
Given today's technology and the growing, like the speed at which we're growing, what do you think is the scope and the opportunity for natural materials?
I try to advocate natural materials, as I have done with my Universal Expert range, and I think we can use a lot more natural materials. I think the problem comes with when people try either use synthetic materials or natural materials. Actually, I think what works quite well is if you use a bit of both and you use the right material for the right purpose. And then I think you can probably largely build things out of natural materials and use synthetic materials for components that need to be particularly sophisticated or intelligent. That's maybe an approach, but the important thing is to be able to take things apart. What I love about natural materials is that they grow gracefully and, you know, in a way that polymers rarely do. Mind you, I've still got the ski boots Alf gave me for my 40th birthday, and they're 17 years old, and I'm sure they still work. Sorry. Does that answer your question? I mean, it's difficult, you know, you look at a ski boot, and actually it's made out of a polymer, and that is the ideal material for it. Leather ski boots were hell. You know, a lot of people's ankles have been saved by polymer ski boots, and, you know, if people were still using leather ski boots, they probably wouldn't be skiing so fast, and, you know, the unintended consequences is that people are skiing a lot faster, and a lot more people on ski skirts, and it's become a lot more dangerous. But, you know, you can argue the same for medicine.
I'm going to pick on one of my colleagues now, who seems to be looking away. Steve Morris.
Why?
Because you've asked an interesting question. which I think is about the relationship between design and material science. But perhaps you could give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thought was a very interesting presentation, and I know the thing that struck me is that there's a lot of consumer products, and there's a lot of design in consumer products, because obviously that's the thing we have every day in our homes, and I can sort of empathise with that. But I work a lot with people who are developing technologies for, I guess, industrial side of things, and I think that one of the issues they have when they're developing innovative new products is that they don't have that input from design at that crucial stage, which is right at the beginning. And I know you had design right through from the beginning to the launch of the product. And I was just wondering if you had some thoughts on how designers could get more involved with the scientists and the engineers who are developing technologies for, things that aren't necessarily consumer products. I don't know whether that's an easy question or not, but I'm going to ask you.
All right. Well, I'm a designer in residence at Sheffield University's Science and Engineering faculty. And this is like going to heaven for me, because, it's what I always as a child I wanted to be. And when we first started doing it, you could see a lot of the researchers were thinking, oh, what do we need a designer for? Oh, it's, and this perception that I was good with colour and form and that sort of thing. And what we're finding now is that there's a queue of people wanting my time. This is after 3 years. And I'm fully booked up there, and they are, because what I'm doing is that I'm looking at their research and looking at it from a different perspective. And it's a collaborative thing. I'm not telling them how to do their job, for goodness sake. But I am sort of saying, well, hey, you've got this problem here, but have you thought of making something like this? Or, God, that would be fantastic if it were in something like that. And just allowing to see what they're doing from the perspective, not just of a consumer. I've shown you a lot of consumer products, but, I've done my fair share of bus shelters and the like. The helping to visualise that this clunky thing that they've got in front of them, this development prototype, actually what it might look like. And when they get in front of, because the one thing that I've noticed about scientists and researchers is funding seems to be the main driving force. And if you've got a very good visual of what your product might be like, and if you've got someone who's trained in presenting product and showing it in a good and attractive way, the chances of you getting up on the funding ladder are much better. So I think, and I don't think it's just because they want the funding that they want to work with me, but I think that we're mutually inspiring. And I think that's what we need to aim for. But the key word is collaboration.
Do we have David McPhail from Imperial College? David, would you, because I think your question possibly builds on that theme a little bit.
You remind me of the question.
It's to do with the material science curriculum.
And design that's integrated into the material science curriculum. Interesting that you have this experience at Sheffield. Are they increasing the amount of design that they're putting into the curriculum as a result of your engagement?
A lot of the problem with design is that people don't understand designers. And there's, you take the word design and it goes from building design, bridge design to shoe design, hat design, and graphic design. And there's a big spectrum. There's a very, very wide gamut. And the sort of designers that, you meet people and say, oh, I know designers. I had someone come and design my website. And there are good designers and there are bad designers. But if you look at the medical profession, and compare it to the design profession, you've got hospital porters, you've got junior doctors, you've got very good nurses, you've got dreadful nurses, you've got brain surgeons, you've got a whole gamut of people there. And, you know, if I have cut my finger, I know the sort of person I want to go to. And if I have an aneurysm, I know the sort of person to go to. But part of the problem is that people, if they realise that they need design, or realise that they've got a problem, or that they are ill, as it were, who do they go to? There's not a sort of clearinghouse like a GP who can say, oh, well, what you need is this. I can advise you to do this. And my belief is that every company board should have someone responsible for design, in the same way that they're responsible for law, or they're responsible for sustainability, or for personnel and things like that. It should be something that, you know, I'm not suggesting that it's by law, but I think, you know, a well-run company should have someone that's focusing on these issues. And it shouldn't be seen as a luxury. It's actually, it should be, the design should be viewed as something that will give your company a competitive edge.
Thank you very much. And you know, we're beginning to try and embed that through courses like Global Innovation Design and Innovation Design Engineering for our culture of art. So there's a lot more that could be done.
I perfectly agree with you.
Really just picking up on some little thing you said about there being a clearinghouse. There used to be a clearinghouse. It was the old Design Council before it was gutted by the government. The old Design Council in the mid-80s had a staff of 350. By 1994 it was 30. So it's not surprising that we have lost a heck of a lot that we used to have, and we used to lead the world in. You mentioned the German Design Council. There's one in Australia. There are several around the world, based on what Design Council used to be. The Design Council now is a shadow of its former self, and perhaps we should go back to where we were.
Yeah, I was sat on the Design Council towards the end, and it was a very sad shadow, not even a shadow of its former self. And it was when I think back of the Design Council of the 60s, and you know, my favourite magazine when I was a teenager was Design Magazine, which was produced by the Design Council, which was an outstanding magazine, and I can remember some of the photographs, and I found it really inspiring. And it espoused design to the people that will be interested. And I think the trouble is that it comes back to the important things are often intangible. And although when you go into a voting booth, I'm not sure how much of your vote is emotional and how much of it is rational, the politicians seem to be, or policymakers seem to be obsessed with statistics, and you look at how well evidence, how important evidence is, but in the court of common sense, statistics can be completely misleading, and maybe they're thinking, oh, well, we don't have any manufacturing any longer, so why do we need people to design things to be manufactured? Because they're going to only work for people abroad. I mean, there are issues there. I mean, I can't answer them, but I 100% agree with you. And, it's my, I try to be a design advocate and put a lot of effort into it and try and understand it and explain it to people. And working with the TSB, and I think we're making some progress. But if you put the word digital in front of design, there's lots of money. I think it's traditional craft-based design and product design that is out of favour at the moment, but who's to know in the future?
We've got a question here. Just say who you are.
Hi, I'm Naomi Taylor and I manage the Parliamentary Group for Design and Innovation. I mean, I think that there's a real danger that the design skill set is going to be undermined, sort of with this very TSB having focus. But I think it probably is the role of designers to stand up and talk about the value of the skill set. And I just want to know your thoughts on that.
The value of the skill set.
Yeah, I mean, the value of the design skill set, you wouldn't be making products in porcelain or wood.
I think maybe the issue is that the technology is digital, but humans are animal, and always will be. And the issue that at the moment technology seems to be the answer to everything, when actually, some of the answers are not technological, and it's the raw technology is like an uncooked meal, and it needs to be prepared by the chef, the designer, to make it appetizing for the consumer or for the end user. I think there are sort of analogies that you can go on and on and making. And when I'm in a room and I'm reading a report, or I'm hearing people talk and I can't understand what they're saying, and when people are spouting on about what we need is design thinking, and then you ask this person, what do you mean by design thinking? They can't actually describe what they mean by design thinking, and you sort of pick up on jargon and buzzwords, and people speaking sort of nonsense almost. And I think this may have been an issue with the design councils a while ago, and it just all became rather glib. But the skill set of designers is being able to understand cause and effect, and having the imagination to know that if you put all these little bits and pieces together and you do this, that will happen. And it's using that sort of skill set to design a service or whatever. I mean, that's what I sort of think that design thinking means. I turn this handle here, what's going to happen at the end there is one aspect of it. That's the sort of rational side of it. But the other side is, being in touch with what people want, and being the human side of design, and not just the mechanical side, and having some sensitivity and some empathy for the users, and making sure that what you're doing is going to enhance the quality of their lives.
Is there one last question in the room, perhaps connected with the area of materials process, which of course is why we're here today primarily? Do we have one more question on that?
I'm cheating because it's not about, but I thought there wasn't one on form, knowledge, function. But it is another F, and it's the future, at least.
Yeah.
In the not too distant future, there's going to be 9 billion people in the world. So, from a designer perspective, does that mean there's a really nice big market with a lot of variety and many user innovators, user designers? Almost everybody becomes a designer. Or does it mean that success in design is you've got to come up with Apple quality products that sell millions? And so we carry on into the future, 9 billion people, but still only a few really classic designers. What kind of future do you think it might be?
From what I understand, are you saying that the more people we have, the less choice we get with the products we use?
No,
I mean,
I'm suggesting the more people there are,
Yeah.
if the future goes in a certain direction, we could actually make design really exciting and promising, and we have customization everywhere. So there's lots of work for designers because there's a big population, and we come to appreciate lots of variations in designs depending on where those people are living and working and what they're doing.
Yeah, but there always was. I mean, sorry, maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying. I mean,
But
one of the
there
issues...
aren't many Sebastian Conrans in the world who design really well. Lots of students here who are going to be successful in the future. And maybe the art schools and the design schools and the engineering schools should produce a lot more people because the market's growing.
Yeah, I think
but we don't tend to hear that thing. We tend to hear, you know, if this company is going to compete against that one, because success is produce a design that means more people buy that one design.
I think I understand. Sorry if I'm a bit tired. But the issue is that there will be more specialist designers, I think, because to focus on doing one thing really, really well, you rarely get to be the best by being a generalist. Then I would say that people have to realise that, you know, a trained designer is like a trained doctor. You know, yes, we can all go into a chemist and order something off the shelf and see if it makes us feel better. And, you know, a trained violinist can do amazing things with a violin, whereas, you know, because we can pick it up and make a noise, doesn't make us a musician. And people have got to respect the thought that you pick up over years to be a designer. I think a lot of it comes down to imagination, and Einstein said sometimes that imagination was more important than knowledge, and I think it's quite an important sort of thing to remember. And the great thing that you get at the start of your career is quite a lot of imagination, and then this gets trampled on by knowledge. And a lot of the people that work with me are quite young. People come into my office and say, "I've got lots of young people in here," by which I mean under 30, and which I find quite interesting. But I find it really exciting working with young people because they're so much more aware of what's going on, and they're so much more in tune, and they're aware of the trends, and they see things from a different point of view. And then I can collaborate with them and say, "Hey, but you know, you can do this or you can do that," and share my experience. So I think, on top of what you're saying, there's a lot to be said of actually not having great rafts of people all of the same age working together, but actually have multi-generational collaborations happening as well. Not answering your question, but it's a thought that your question sparked off.
I think the audience we've got today amply illustrates that. We've got multi-generation and we've got multidisciplinary in the room, which is wonderful. And your talk has demonstrated how well you've managed to cover all of those spheres.
Well, I'm just passionate about the subject. I mean, that's really...
Well, in fact, that really answers. I was going to ask a student here, Shristi, who says, no, not Shristi, sorry. What do you love about what you do?
Every day is different. You know, I mean, that's the fabulous thing about design is that every challenge is different, and it's like, you know, you've got to really think about things. And you know, I mean, at the moment I'm designing probably my 11th range of chef's knives, and you think, oh my God, not another range. Why do you keep on asking me? And yeah, we found things, we've approached things in a different way, and you know, you'll be amazed how much sophistication there is in a knife handle. and getting it right and the way you use it and things like that. And it's an important thing, and it's about the enjoyment of holding something in your hand. And it's not a particularly technological product, but it's sophisticated on a different level. Why don't I just shut up?
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Big hand of